All right, guys, welcome to a amazing episode today of the Origin Story podcast. Today we have a very amazing guest on today. Thank you, Sam, for connecting us with Tony today. Me and Tony actually got a chance to meet briefly at the All-In event earlier this year, and so this young man is responsible for 5 different businesses. One of those being wholesaling. He's also a speaker, putting on events with like really big speakers, and obviously himself speaking as well, which is really cool to see. Someone who's starting to make a big name for himself inside the real estate industry, and excited to hear the origin story of Tonny Romero. So Tony, thank you so much for being on here today, my friend.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. Super excited.
Dude, and I got to say this, Tony, you and I met earlier this year. We officially met in person in Phoenix, and it's been a little bit of an interesting kind of take. Everywhere I go, you seem to be there. We always run into each other, and we always have a damn good time. And I think it's fair to say you and I have become really close friends since then. You've become a collaborator, you've become a brother to me, and just seeing you grow just this year alone, right? From when I met you, and you were already doing big things then to where you're at now. I mean, it's exponential. It is inspiring. It's motivating in a million different ways. And I am honored to be able to have you here to share some space and time with you. And collaborate with you. I mean, and honestly, this is just the beginning. So when I first reached out to you guys, and I want everyone to know this. When I first reached out to Tony, I told him this, and I told Naaman this. Naaman's a good buddy of mine too. I told you both this, that I'm on a mission to find the next wave of the big names in this industry. And I want to find them before they're already in all the limelight, before they already have 50 million followers and have, taken over and have their own TV shows. Now, Tony, that's going to happen one day. He's going to have a TV show. I don't know what it's going to be about. It might be about it might just be him buying Bugattis or something and doing some dope stuff. But I firmly believe that, Tony, you're a guy that's going to be you're already on big stages. Those stages are only going to get bigger and bigger. And I wanted to highlight you earlier because I believe you and I are going to collaborate in a massive way. I think the same thing is going to happen with you and Logan. Brother, it is an absolute honor to have you. But while we're here, I want to let you know what the origin story is all about. And it is about one simple principle. And that is that when we're speaking to newer investors, because most of our audience are newer investors, they are undertaking a very, very scary endeavor. And that is starting the life of entrepreneurship. It's terrifying. It's absolutely scary to, leave behind, whether it's a W-2 or stability, and try to make it as an entrepreneur. And while people who are, living in mansions or they're driving Lambos and they have fat stacks of cash, all this stuff is inspiring and it's motivating and it's great, it doesn't actually push people to change their lives. They need connection. They need relativity. And this was a lesson that was taught to me by one of my greatest mentors in life, Pace Morby. So on the origin story, we want to hear about all the trials, the tribulations, the things that you had to suffer through to make it to where you're at now. Want to hear the story, behind Tonny Romero becoming who he is now. And we'll get into all the massive things that you got going on and what you got going on in the future. But brother, again, it is an honor for me to be here with you. Let's lead us in.
Ooh. Yeah, well, first of all, I want to say thanks for having me, of course. Obviously you and Sam, you're a very close friend, one of very few. So we've grown a lot over the year. And like you said, we've seen each other so much at so many events. And that's because we love networking. We love investing in ourselves. And we love learning. We're always students. So we always go back and forth and, give each other as much information as possible and learn from one another. So super honored to be here, Logan. Can't wait to build a relationship with you as well as, as time goes on. But where do I start, man? I mean, I feel like, do I start in the womb?
Or... Bro, I mean, knowing you probably had a business in the womb. I'm just saying, you were probably doing something in there. Guys, just a reminder, if I didn't mention this enough, Tony, how old are you?
I just turned 23.
23. Okay, man, wherever you feel it starts, let us in then. I mean, you're only 23 years old, but you're doing pretty freaking well.
Yeah, so, I guess there's a good story. So there's not a lot of podcasts that go really into the origin, which is really cool because a lot of people always, try to figure out try to unlock my brain in a sense and try to figure out why I am the way I am. And there's a lot of pieces to it. So I hope that gets discovered in this podcast and I can reference people to it as time goes on. But I want to say, like, it all starts with my parents, seeing them as an example. Two different features. One, my parents are divorced now. That was pretty tough growing up. That was, that happened around like freshman, sophomore year. I'll get into that a little bit later. But my parents are both distinct. I have attributes from both sides that have made me who I am. On my mom's side, my mom used to be one of the top sales lady in the state of Wisconsin for Mary Kay. She won, I believe, 4 pink Cadillacs. So she had a lot of ambition and drive coming into the country. She didn't really understand English, didn't know anything, didn't know anyone here. And eventually learned English, went to school and made something of herself to a very high level and became very independent. And so that's where I get a lot of my independence from, and my ambition and drive and creativeness to figure out solutions to different situations rather than just stay put. And then on my father's side, and I'll go back to the beginning as well, but on my father's side, something that I get a lot from him is the amount of hard work I put in. So, for example, being 7:16 at night, still being here in the office, and then after this podcast, having more student calls with some of my students in California, and then, doing some other stuff on the computer till midnight. So we work hard, we work a lot. It's been something that has really helped me in my journey to be able to create as much as I have in such a small period of time, and because of lack of sleep. But it's that drive that I have, and it doesn't go away. And my camera crew, my video crew, whenever they fly out with me to events, they're like, dude, how do you even operate? It's just crazy to see it because you barely even sleep. We show up, our flights are super early. Usually we fly out on Friday mornings. On Thursday nights, I'm already doing, student calls all night. So I don't get any sleep, straight to the airport events, et cetera. So, and then we come back during the week and, it's straight to business right away and straight to making sure that everything's running and operating the way it is and everybody's being responsible. So I get a lot of that, wanting to work very, very hard for my father. He's always, from the beginning, since I was born, he's worked 2 full-time jobs at all times, still to this day, working that many. And so that's 23 years of my life. If he can do it, and at his age, I can do it for a very, very long time. And that's where I get a lot of my ambition. And that's why I don't really have a lot of excuses in my life, or don't get lazy or don't get content, because I know how much drive they have and they've been doing it for so long. So I can do it too. So, so that's where I get a little bit of them from. I think from my mom and a little bit from my dad, but mainly from my mom, I get the entrepreneurial side of me. Which when I was young, my brother and I would go to Mexico starting at the age of like 8, 9, 10 years old. And we would go every summer, and we'd go for a few months. And in Mexico, my parents grew up in areas where there were dirt roads, and people are very uneducated. My mom used to cry just to be able to go to, like, try to beg to go to school, because women weren't allowed to go to school. They were to take care of the house and make sure everything was be a house wife pretty much. And so that's how she grew up. And so when we would go to Mexico, a lot of people down there didn't have much. I remember my mom used to pack our best clothes, and she would want us to leave them there. Because so that somebody else could have them. And my brother and I were like, no, these are our clothes. Why are we leaving them down there? But, it was because of the fact that a lot of people down there didn't have what we had. And at that age, we didn't really understand that fully. We wanted what was ours. So when we'd go down there, my mom would actually send us, my mom and my dad would actually send us a lot of 20 pesos per day, which is about $2 American dollars. But over there, that's a lot of money. And so that's every single day for 3 months. We were pretty much the richest kids in a couple miles, radius. And even then, even though I really didn't need to do anything while I was down there other than enjoy, I was still going. I found a guy who was making popsicles and selling them door to door. I found the same guy was actually making bread and selling it door to door. And I was doing that. And I would go, and I went to this other family that was selling a lot of different goods, and trying to help them and seeing how I could work for them, and just flipping stuff while I was down there when I had no necessity to do it. It was just kind of that ambition in me that really wanted to create something out of nothing, and kind of that, I feel like, that entrepreneurial blood. Then growing up here, as I was growing up, one day in high school, there's this multicultural club, and they sell churros. And I found the source that sold churros, went to the source, negotiated a deal, bought 400 churros and sold them in school privately. And then would flip
Wait, okay. You're
Yeah.
not going to skate by that. You're not going to skate by that. So, guys, if you guys noticed this, what he basically just said is he went direct to the wholesaler. You went direct to either the wholesaler or the supplier, and then you basically positioned yourself as another wholesaler of churros.
Yep.
And then you were in high school?
Yeah. So I was in high school. I went to a private high school. A lot of white kids. White kids love churros. And so it was an easy sell, and I could sell them for quite a bit. So I was making about 50% profit on those. And I sold out very frequently until one day I got caught. But yeah, I mean, I sold churros. I flipped shoes. I flipped Jordans very early on. I was always flipping stuff. I love doing that. I think if I wouldn't have gone into the real estate side and I would have caught Gary Vee a little bit, earlier, I would have probably started flipping either couches or just goods on eBay, because it's just, love creating something out of nothing. And I hated school. So that was one thing that I didn't like. I was never really good at school. A lot of people do know this now, but I actually didn't graduate high school. I got kicked out my senior year, and I've never actually told the story of why, other than to a few people. So I'm sure.
Well, guess what? I have a question for you. I have a really important question for you, Tony, right here live on the Origin Story. Why did you get kicked out of high school?
So I'm going to give you guys the actual legit story, and it's not a very sexy story. It's actually not good at all. But my grades were kind of not that great. And then one day, it's a private school, very, very, very strict. I mean, an average of 10 people get kicked out per day. And I remember there was this, you guys all know it, it's called Adderall. Somebody gave me an Adderall pill for free, and I ended up giving it to somebody else who wanted it, just one pill. And security saw me and assumed that I was drug dealing. And I never really was a drug dealer. The one thing I always stayed away from, that there were times when I thought about becoming a drug dealer. I was like, I'd be the best drug dealer in the city. But one thing that always stopped me was my mom was my mom would clean our room every single day. And it was really just to check to see if we had drugs anywhere. So my mom would do a lot of these little tests. She'd clean our room to see if we had drugs. She'd leave large amounts of money, since Mary Kay was very cash heavy. This is back in the day when cash was used very frequently. She'd leave a lot of cash on the table and count it all in different variations, a bunch of 20s, a bunch of 10s, a bunch of 5s. She'd leave a couple $1,000 on there, and then she'd count it after a couple of days to see if my brother or I would have taken even $1. And my mom was just so kind of like strict but also loving, that it just never really became something that I was into. And so anyways, never got into drugs, never really even liked drugs to begin with. Like, even to this day, I've never really done drugs because it's not my thing. So I gave somebody the Adderall pill, and then I ended up getting kicked out because of that. So, my grades weren't really the best to be able to keep me there. And so that was really the story. And then ever since then, I just never graduated high school, and I'm glad I didn't for some reason. It gives me a lot more motivation to say, like, I'm a lot more comparable to a lot of kids that maybe have failed or maybe made a bad choice throughout their life and feel like a failure, because after that, I felt like a failure. I mean, my parents were very devastated, and they spent a lot of money for me to go to schools like that. Private school's not cheap. You're paying $13,000 a year just to be there. And so I felt like, that was it. Like, my life was over. And it turns out that it wasn't over, thankfully. But I had to go through a lot of downhills to be able to get to where I am now.
Tony, that's awesome that you shared that story, right? I think you're 100% right about that. Like, people really relate to people who they can see themselves, where they see themselves in that same situation. And you talked a lot about, not finishing high school. I actually resonated with you when you talk about your parents getting divorced. That's about the age my parents got divorced. I think it was 7th or 8th grader when my parents split up. And so kind of walk me through that and how that, your relationship with your parents, how maybe it shifted or it changed? Did you blame one parent or the other? Like, did you have to go between households? Like, kind of share with us a little bit about that experience with divorced parents and how that maybe shaped your entrepreneurial spirit and your wanting to, distract. I won't say distract yourself, but focus yourself on business rather than doing drugs or other things.
Yeah, that's actually really interesting because I feel like part of being an entrepreneur came from those things, from just trying to be outside of the house.
Hmm.
But one of the things that my parents did is they would get into arguments, like never physical. That's the amazing thing about my parents is that they never got physical. They if they argued, it was with words. And my brother and I got to see some of those things, but it wasn't like crazy, insane stuff. It was just they weren't getting along anymore. The biggest thing that hurt my brother and I was the fact that neither of them moved out for about a year and a half of them really not being together at all. So thankfully we had a 4-bedroom house so they could, they each had their own room. My brother and I had our own room. So it was like everybody just had their own rooms, but you can just sense it for a year and a half that, things were pretty much done for, except they just wanted to stay together to keep my brother and I intact. But in reality, I mean, if you've been through it, that doesn't really help. Not when you're a kid and you don't really understand some of these things.
No.
So,
And so after that year and a half, did you end up living with just one parent, or did you go back and forth? What was?
Good question. We say, oh yeah, actually, yeah. So we ended up going to my dad's a little bit, not so often, more so with my mom. And really was because my dad has always, like I said, from the beginning, worked 2 full-time jobs. So it's not like I even got to really see him. Even when I was a little kid, I remember my dad would get home from one job and I would get to say hi to him. He'd sleep like 2, 3 hours. And that's during the time that my favorite television show as a little kid would, pop on. So I knew that once my dad got home, it was time to watch my show. And, then it was him going back to work the next day, or back to work in a couple hours and doing it all over again. So that's actually is what led me to get jobs during high school. So my grades weren't the greatest. And a big reason for that was because in high school, I worked a full-time job even while I was in school, and it was 3rd shift. So I'd go to school and then I'd go to school, I'd go home, sleep a little, and then go to work at 10 p.m., an hour away. So I'd wake up at 8:30, shower, leave at 9 and get there at 10 p.m., work till 6 a.m. and then go to school in the morning all day. And on the weekends, I would get a part-time job and work that as well, helping decorate some different venues. It was like an event company. So I was always just trying to find jobs. I had a lot of love for money when I was growing up.
Yeah. What sort of influences outside of your parents did you have from other people, whether it be employees you worked for or other maybe friends of your parents or like adult mentors that came into your life, or maybe it was even like on the internet? Like, who are some of the influences outside of your parents?
I feel like in the moment it was my parents. After some time, once my parents separated officially, after a few years, my stepdad came into my life, which my stepdad owns the 2nd biggest law firm in the state of Wisconsin for personal injury and law. And growing up, I had seen him on billboards and buses and TV episodes, and it was really cool to see him in person. And I mean, growing up, you kind of, when you go to when you're a minority and you go to a school that's not minority based, like in grade school, my brother and I went to a private grade school as well. So we were always in private schools. In grade school, actually, we went to a school where my brother and I were the only 2 non-white kids in the school. And then in high school, we went to an all boys school, and it was a private school as well. So it was majority white. And so when you're kind of growing up and you don't have a lot of things, I don't know, in America, you really just want to be American as you possibly can be.
Yeah.
And being able to like have white step siblings and a white stepfather was like really cool to me, because I always felt like I didn't fit in for a long time. And it was really just because my brother and I were always the outcasts every single time, everywhere we were, because that was the life we were around. So that was a big change for me. And then seeing that he was a lawyer, my whole life I was told, be a lawyer, be a lawyer, be a lawyer, be a doctor, by my mom. And so, seeing that somebody was in the family like that was like, whoa, it was super incredible. It kind of gave me a little bit more hope as to who I was. And it made me a little bit more proud of who I was, even if that wasn't necessarily my father.
Yeah, that's amazing, man. And so, what was the relationship like with your stepdad? Obviously, it was like when you first got together, or when you're maybe when you first met him. Obviously, there's a little bit of starstruck, right? He's like, oh, like I've seen this guy before.
Yeah.
Was he someone who actually became a mentor to you? Did he like give you business advice? Was he somebody who like tried to step more into like a father figure? I know you're obviously in like in high school. So, kind of what role did he play in your life, and what role does he still play in your life?
Yeah, so in the beginning, he was somebody who I really looked up to, especially in business. Seeing, how he presents himself was really big to me. Um, and then also how he treated my mom was really amazing too, because he really, from day one, loved my mom like crazy, and still to this day is probably the best thing that ever happened to my mom in her life. So that's also been super amazing. But yeah, he was a big inspiration for me. I had a lot of questions, growing up, but I couldn't really relate because I wasn't an entrepreneur. Not necessarily, I was still kind of a high school kid just trying to figure stuff out. And obviously he went the college route. So a lot of the talk was, hey, are you going to be a doctor? Are you going to be a lawyer? What are you studying? So it was a little bit different. Now over time, that has completely shifted. Even last week, we were talking about his ad spend on his billboards and how,
Nice.
how much he spends compared to other people and why he hasn't expanded into additional markets, ever since, and all the laws that have changed around advertising, like, all those different things, so he's presented a lot of numbers to me, and he always asks me, hey, how's the podcast going? Hey, how's this going? How's this going? So it's really awesome. The conversations I have grown from it now to this day. But in the beginning, it was just more of the college route and the college expectations. Because I have three step siblings, all three. One just got her white coat to be, and she's in med school.
Nice.
So one's about to go to med school, and one's in college to go to med school as well. So three doctors in the family. And then my brother is going to be, I believe, a lawyer, studying to be a lawyer. So it's the college route for them.
Nice. You don't have to pay for all their tuition, huh?
No,
I mean, I gotta say this. It's rare to see a family have, a few kids go that. And I mean, I have an advanced degree. Like I went the college route, then I got a grad degree. I graduated summa cum laude. I did like all the accolade stuff that is normal. And it's really interesting to see, a family that has that dynamic where there's a few of them who are doctors and lawyers. And then that kind of makes sense. And it's synergistic with the fact that your stepfather is one of the most prominent lawyers in your state. But then you, on the other hand, went the totally different. No, I'm not going to work for anybody else. Probably an unemployable human being. This is, I heard this quote kind of the other day. It's that when I made my first bit of money as an entrepreneur, I realized I'm forever unemployable. But so just to kind of move it along a little bit, you got kicked out of school, right? Because they thought you were drug dealing, and that's not it. That's fine. It's okay. We're not going to hold that against you. You just got to learn to be a little bit more sneaky. That's it. It's okay. So at what point though? Because here's the thing: you were doing these things, right? You were flipping stuff. You were doing maybe a little bit of econ, maybe a little bit of X, Y, or Z, and it's really kind of you're being a hustler. You're a young hustler. You're just hustling whatever good that you can. At what point do you decide? Like, I'm going to be, there's a difference between, just doing little gig stuff for money versus I'm going to be a freaking entrepreneur. Like, take us into how you're, where did this start? Because right now, how many companies do you own?
I own 5 actual profitable companies.
Wow. That's awesome.
So let's lead into that. Like, how did that, because you don't stumble your way onto that. That is a decision that is made to live your life a certain way. How did we get there?
Yeah. So I, get kicked out of high school. So I guess back up a little, I get kicked out of high school. At the time, growing up, I had a big understanding. I hung around the wrong people. So I made a lot of bad decisions, but also I always try to impress other people. And they say, don't go poor trying to look rich. And that was a very big lesson that I learned very early on is I ended up getting behind my parents' back a Mustang GT. So I had my cousin co-sign on it for me, $55,000 car. I believe it was $650 a month car payment, $450 a month insurance payment, and then like $500 a month in gas because I was driving an hour to work, and it's a 5.0 engine, and I like the speed. So, $1,500 roughly all around per month, and as a teenager, no matter where you're working, how many hours you're working, that's a lot of money. And so I had all this debt on me, and I didn't really know how to manage my money whatsoever. I didn't know how to invest, where to invest, what to do, and I was just spending every single check. I remember one day I really, really, really wanted a chocolate bar, and it was between getting gas or getting the chocolate bar. Because I needed to get to work, but that was all the money I had. But here I was with this nice Mustang that everybody could see, but it was you're not really happy. You're always stressed. You're like, don't know what to do. And honestly, I thought I was going to be in that position for the whole 6 years because, you take out a car payment for 6 years and you're kind of stuck with it. And luckily, at some point, I ended up I don't know, maybe God, this lady hit me and she took a red light and she totaled my car. And so I ended up getting paid out by the insurance, and that released me from my liability, my biggest liability. But honestly, if it wasn't for that, I don't think I would even be here because I'd still have that big payment over my head every single month for a very long time, which wouldn't have given me the opportunity to take the risk that I really wanted to, or really that I did take in the beginning as I started my businesses. So going back into kind of the real estate side, my parents, I was living with my parents for a little bit. And then, when I got kicked out of high school, they decided, hey, you're going to have to move out. It's either you go to school or you move out. And I knew I didn't want to go to school. I didn't want to go to college. So I decided to move out. And so I pretty much got kicked out from a Friday to a Monday. And so I had a girlfriend at the time, and I, went and started living with her, and just kind of really just didn't try to figure out what was me. I remember I did e-com for a little bit, so I did try that side. I bought a course by one of the biggest e-commerce guys selling stuff on Shopify, trying to flip it from Alibaba and AliExpress, and doing that route. And that went not really. I made some money, but nothing crazy, a couple $1,000, and that was it. And then it just really didn't work out for me. And then eventually I found wholesaling. So one day I found wholesaling right around the time when I had crashed that Mustang, actually. And luckily, for some reason, I ended up getting my first deal 4 days in, thankfully.
Oh.
And it was a pre-foreclosure lead. I had a few leads, up until that day, but I had a pre-foreclosure lead. A guy was super motivated, and I ended up walking the property. I had a buddy of mine who had acquisition experience. He worked for another buddy of mine who had a wholesaling company. And I asked him, hey, if you come help me with this deal, I'll give you 15% of the deal. And so he came down. We ended up walking the property. I remember we both stood outside, and I had a good understanding because I had studied wholesaling for like 2 or 3 months prior to that. I didn't pick up the phone and call anybody at all, not once. I didn't skip trace a list. I didn't do anything other than just study it. And so now that I had done it, we both stood in front of the property, and I was like, we both kind of said 45,000 is the sweet spot on this. And that's what we agreed on before walking into the house. We had a contract with us. And so we end up walking the property. And thankfully, we didn't give him the number that he wanted, the number that we were thinking. We didn't give our offer first. The guy wanted 25,000 for the home. And so we were ready to offer 45. Thankfully, we didn't. We just we ended up at 25. So we ended up giving him an extra $5,000 because there were some additional lawyer fees and things like that were going to have to take place because of the pre-foreclosure. So we ended up signing under contract at 30,000. I had 3 buyers that I found on Facebook. All 3 walked it. I got an offer for 55. We made $24,995 on that first deal. Closed very smoothly, no problems whatsoever. We had a lockbox on that property to do our showing very easily. Seller moved out very easily. Like the most beautiful deal you could ever do. So simple and clean. And then we were able to, close on that deal and make 25 grand from it. And that's kind of what started everything.
Okay, I have to say this. For anyone that's new and you're getting into wholesaling, I want you to know that is a unicorn situation. It typically will not go that easily. Like, I've got a pretty robust pipeline, and I'm like, man, I pray that every deal goes like that. So guys, just know that it's going to be a little bit more difficult than that. Typically, Tony's just kind of a badass, so things kind of work out in his favor. It's just the way it is. But okay, so you get your first deal, you make freaking 25 grand on it. I mean, you get it 4 days in. from a start of execution. You get 4 days and you get a contract. It closes no problem. You got buyers. Use Facebook Marketplace to start dispoing it to find your buyers. And then you go and get 25 G's on that. I mean, that proof of concept, I'm sure, was probably life-changing for you.
Yeah, I mean, it gave me so much inspiration. I mean, that day changed my life forever. You know, it was finally real to me, and it just really fueled the fire. Because everything, my first 8, 9, 10 months in business, the biggest fire in me was, how do I prove my parents wrong, that they were wrong, that not going to college was okay, that I can still make as much money as a doctor or more money than a doctor, that I'll be okay. You know, all these thoughts were going through my head of, how do I just prove them wrong?
It's amazing, man. And so let me ask you this. So as you make this first transaction in the wholesale business, like, was it that moment that you're like, I can actually do this? Or was there another moment a little further on down the road where it cemented that you're an entrepreneur and you're not going back, not going to school? Like, it's not even an option.
Can you repeat that one? Sorry.
Yeah. Was that the moment, like when you made that first sale in the wholesale, you made that $25,000 check? Was that the moment you're like, okay, I'm an entrepreneur. Like, I'm not going back. I'm not going to go back to school. I'm not going to go get a job. Like, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. I'm going to make this thing work. Or was there a different moment where you can look at where like, okay, like that's defined who you are. Like, you made the decision that you are going to be an entrepreneur.
I think that was the moment, because up until that point, I had made the previous year. I remember I was working nonstop, and, you know, 2 full-time jobs, sometimes a part-time job. And I had made $35,000 at the end of the year on my income tax report. And now, off of one deal in 4 hours of work, I had made $25,000. I knew that as long as I invested the money and repeated the process, that I could do it over and over and over again, or at least I hoped at that point. But it gave me the courage to say, like, this is legit. Now I just got to repeat it, and I got to figure it out.
How did your action change after that moment? Like, did you act with more belief? Did you act with more confidence? Like, did your actions actually change after that, making that first check and proving concept?
Yeah. So I was always, I gotta say, like, I always kind of had like that little bit of cockiness in me to think that I could do it all.
Yeah.
It was just figuring out how. So I ended up hiring a buddy and getting him on commission. I had heard back in the day that, you know, commission was kind of big back in the day, and it still is to this degree. You know, it's nowadays, but now, you know, salaries are a little bit more common. But I had heard that, you know, commission was a way of doing this, and so I hired a buddy of mine to cold call on commission in house. And then the acquisitions guy, I hired him immediately as well, just to do solely acquisitions for me. So I hired a team immediately, because also that 24,995 hit right around the same time I got my. So when I crashed the Mustang, remember this, couple of weeks prior to that, I crashed the Mustang. I still owed like 27 or something, some big number on the Mustang. They ended up covering like 22. And then, because I had already had the Mustang for like 2.5 years, and they ended up covering like 22 or something like that. And then thankfully, when I signed the papers, whoever sold me the car made me sign GAP. And GAP insurance covers the cost, the difference between what the insurance covers and what's left on the vehicle, if in case you still owe. And so GAP covered the rest. So I was set there. And then I got a check for my injuries of, I think it was like anywhere between 15 and 20K. I don't remember the exact amount, but it was right around there. And so that money plus the 25,000 hit right around the same time. Nice. So I had like $45,000 to play with. And I was like, I know I just want to do this. Like, this was a turning point where I said, I've already failed so many times in my life. I've done it the wrong way. Now let me figure it out the right way. I have something that works, so let's just run with it. And that's what I did. I ran with it. And for 8 months straight, we had our head down. My mom, actually, she gave us her office. So this was in the peak of COVID, when people were still quarantining like crazy, or barely quarantining. Like 4 days, like when I first started my wholesaling, 4 days before I got the first deal, about a month prior was when it really hit the news, where people were just going like staying home for sure. So, you know, it lasted a couple months. So my mom was in quarantine. My parents actually ended up quarantining for 9 months straight. No human contact whatsoever.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Crazy, right? But anyways, so she ended up giving us her office. It was in the basement of my stepdad's building, and they ended up renting it to me, and it was all pink because she sells Mary Kay. That's a pink. Their main
Yeah.
color, they're pink and black. And this is where we worked for a couple of months. It was pink and black, and then eventually, once we started making some serious money, and this actually became something that we started doing frequently. We ended up painting the office and keeping the office. But that's how we started, and so I ended up hiring my buddy to do cold calling live. I bought a lot of leads. I tried every system I could, and then my acquisitions buddy, he would show up to the properties and get paid. And immediately we started having success right out the gate. I think just naturally, I've always been good at talking with people and building conversations. So even when my acquisitions guy wasn't necessarily available, I was always at least willing to walk the property and close the property. Also, our market is still not saturated. Go back 2 years ago, it's very not saturated, and there's a lot of distress. It was very uncommon to be a wholesaler in my market. So there was not a lot of competition, and there were a lot of hungry buyers because it's a good rental market. So we had a huge advantage there that we started where there's a lot of distress, and people are super nice. So you don't get the FUs here. Maybe I always tell people when we started, it was 1 out of 500 calls. Now it's maybe still 1 out of 250. Like, it's still a great ratio. People are just, hey, can you guys stop calling? Yeah, absolutely. No problem, ma'am. I'll make sure we take you off our list. Simple, right? Super easy, super, super nice. And there's a lot of distress. So a lot of people have bad situations, bad tenants, fire damages are going, are very common over here. Things of that sort. Evictions were very heavy. And obviously this is during COVID season. So, there's a lot of regulation around it. So we just had a lot of success with a lot of leads coming in very, very quickly early on.
And so for anybody who doesn't know where you're at, you're in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Is that the market that you actually do business in as well, or that you market in?
Yeah. So about 75% of our business now is still here. Back in the day, for first 8 months, 100% of our business was here. So we've expanded quite a bit, but still majority of our business is here.
That's awesome. And so what does your business look like now? So this was, about 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago. So what does your business look like now in comparison to what it looked like back when you first got started?
So I'll kind of build up to that super quick in like 1 minute. So when we first got that first deal, I remember from there to the first 8 months, our only strategy was cold calling in that time. So all we did was cold calling, nothing else, no other avenue. We just wanted to perfect cold calling, and we used Mojo Dialer. So very, very simple. And during that time, we were head down. I remember I would sleep in my office a lot of times because we were here so late. It was like 2 a.m. and I would have to be here back, 6, 7 a.m. anyways. So I was just sleep here a lot of times. It was during COVID time too, which was a really big advantage because not a lot of people were doing anything. So it gave me a lot of time to not have distractions and just focus on the business. There was nowhere to go. I remember, most of the times we went to houses where people, were wearing masks and were scared of being exposed. Like, there was nothing to do on the weekend. So we were head down for 8 months straight. No going out, no going with friends, no eating out, nothing. Like, it was just straight business for 8 months. And so we built up very, very quickly because we became professionals at this just so quick because of the amount of leads we had coming in, the amount of deals we had coming in. I mean, 4 months in, we were already doing like 8 deals a month. So it was just very good. And then another advantage that I had that I think is a big lesson for a lot of people is you always want to treat the people that handle your money very well, and title agents handle your money. Title agents are a big advantage and a big relationship that you should always keep and have very close. So one thing that we did is we had 2 major title agents, well, technically 3, but 2 major title agents that were very favorited in our market. So we would post on the Facebook groups, hey, we're wholesalers, which title company and which title agent is very wholesale friendly. And right away, you would just see the common answer immediately. Boom, this person, this person, this person. It was just like the same 2 people over and over, 2 different title companies. So what we did is we sent a bouquet of flowers to each, and we sent gift cards. I think $100 in gift cards to each of them, plus a really nice bouquet. I'm talking like $150, $175 bouquet to each. And that started an amazing relationship. And I actually got that from Aaron Bevins. He told me early on, that's kind of where I got the lesson. And so that was one of the best things that I ever did, because every single time we would run into an issue, I could call title and figure it out. Hey, this buyer wants to back out. What do I do? Hey, how much earnest money do I need to put on the contract? Hey, this is the situation right here. What do we do? And every single time they would answer our phone, hey, I know you guys are super busy tomorrow, and today's Thursday, tomorrow's Friday, but and I know you guys are packed completely, but this seller, if I do not close tomorrow, they're backing out of this deal. And boom, they'd get us in, right? And it was that relationship that really built us. So, anyways, fast forward now. At one point in the middle, we grew to 11 people in house. I realized very quickly that's way too many people to have in house. I've always thought that having more people meant making more money, and that's not necessarily right. Actually, if you scale too quick, way too quick, which is what we did, we scaled too quick. You lose culture, and you don't have your people are not trained well enough. If you don't have the right infrastructure, some people can, but you got to pay big salaries to have the right people in place to be able to train then those people while you're not there. When we're paying commission, we don't have the infrastructure for that because people have to be doing things that make them money to make money. Yep. And so now we've gone down and we have 4 acquisitions, 1 disposition, and then 1 junior disposition / transactional coordinator. And that's how we operate our business. And now we're up to 14 VAs.
Wow. And are you still primarily cold calling? Or are you also doing texting? Any other ways of marketing that you're doing that you've added on?
Yeah. So cold calling is still our forte, as people like to call it. And then texting has been a very big part of our business nowadays. Also on the disposition side, texting has been very big for us, but on the seller side too. And we've barely gotten into PPC a little bit, but not enough to become pros yet.
Keyword yet. So I'm actually making the full transition to complete PPC, and it's like the best thing ever. But I want to know, you're crushing wholesale now. And I love everyone that's listening right now, there's a lot of new people who keep throwing around this word. They get 1 deal, 2 deals, 3 deals, and they're like, okay, I need to scale. That word is a landmine. That word is an absolute landmine. If you're starting to use that word and you aren't crushing consistently, like at least 5 deals a month predictably, and that's a keyword, it has to be predictable. If you're not doing that, you shouldn't even be thinking about scaling. Because like Tony said, 100%, you scale too quick, it's going to fall apart. You scale too quick, you haven't built the foundation and the infrastructure to handle that growth. Culture will suffer. This is just the reality of it. And who's it going to hurt the most? It's going to hurt your original group of people. They're not going to like that, they were in the trenches with you when you first got started, and now you're bringing in a bunch of new people out of nowhere. They don't get the vibe. They don't get the culture. They don't understand what you're building. They don't understand the vision quality yet, and that hurts everybody. So I'm super glad you said that, because we bring in a lot of people here who crush not just wholesale, but fix and flip developments, a lot of amazing entrepreneurs. And that's one thing I'm always kind of aware of, is let's not get people shiny object syndrome with that word scaling. But I want to, kind of move into this, because obviously you and I connect because we're real estate investors. We're going to do so much stuff. We're already collaborating on a lot of cool things. How did you get into some of the other entrepreneurial ventures that you have? Because one of them is not anything to do with real estate. You've got a pet grooming company. And then I'm super stoked about this. You've got a taco truck business.
Yeah, you missed it at the event, man.
Dude, I'm so sorry. I'll be 100% next one, front row the entire time. I got you, brother.
So, so we got into the taco truck business. Uncles had the idea. They've been in the industry for a long time. So my main businesses as I was growing up, I always worked since I was 16 to, like I said, full-time jobs, especially in the summer, 2 full-time jobs all times. When I was in the warehouse industry, we would work 14-hour shifts, 7 days a week all summer. And you're dying on the way to get to the road. I remember when I was driving forklifts, and we would work third shift. On the way to work, I'd have to drink 3 Monsters just to get there alive for my shift. Like, it was that crazy. I mean, when you're working, 70, 80 hours in 1 week, it's insane. Like, but when you can do that, you can do anything. So anyways, it was in the restaurant industry. I was an amazing wok cook, so I worked at P.F. Chang's. I became a sous chef at like 17 years old. So I was the boss of 30-year-olds and 20-year-olds because I was really, really good. I actually started cooking at 15, my bad. I was started cooking at Applebee's at 15, and they wouldn't give me enough hours. So I ended up contacting managers at 7 different locations, and every single time they wouldn't give me hours, I'd call the next one and get hours there and call, because you could work at multiple locations if they needed you. And so I would keep getting going. And they would never ask me if I was on overtime or not. So they'd figure out later, hey, you're on overtime already, but it was too late because they needed me. So I was always trying to hack the system. But my uncles were managers at the Applebee's, and they were in 2 different regions. So they managed a lot of different restaurants, not just Applebee's, but a few others. And they've been in the industry for a very long time. So has my dad. Like, cooking has been run in the business very heavily for a long, long time. And so we ended up getting into this business. So my uncles kind of wanted to get into the taco truck business, but we're kind of afraid. They were always ready. They were always in that security, like they love the security of having it, but they wanted to go into the entrepreneurial space. And they originally wanted to start with real estate because they had a lot of cash saved up. But we ended up going into the taco truck business. And then now I have my second one being built right now. It actually should be done on Saturday this week. I just asked my contractor today, what kind of yelled at him, like, hey, we need to get this thing done. But my dad I'm giving my dad half the equity to that business. So that's really, really cool because my dad has worked his whole life since I've been born, nonstop. So right now he actually left one job. He has one still full-time job, 3rd shift. And then during the week, so like, for example, yesterday he didn't sleep all day. So he goes 3rd shift, and then he went and built the taco truck all day, went home, snapped 1 hour, and then went to work 3rd shift. And then this morning got 5 hours. And then now he's back at the taco truck building it with the contractor. So it's like things like that, so he doesn't have to be there. I told him, but he really wants to, because he's like, wow, this is mine now, And so I've been able to do things like that. And it's really awesome what real estate can create. I have a pet grooming salon, so I'm married. My wife, I put her through school. Put her through a lot of different mentorships in the pet grooming industry. She actually, as her salon was being built by my contractors, she would drive down about 2 hours, 3 days a week to learn from a mentor down there and work for free for a couple months to try to learn. And all those extra things, like investing in yourselves and going to events and investing in mentors, even if you have to work for free, all those things came from real estate and operating a wholesale company. Yeah. The way I'm going to operate my taco truck and the systems and processes, the way I pay, the way we even like bring in the orders and contact customers and market, it all comes from wholesaling. Like, we learn those steps and then just, revamp them and turn them into, move them to another industry. So we've done that. We have a software company. I think we're up to 230-ish users right now. We've been growing very rapidly, an all-in-one solution called Reziru. So we have that. We have the mentorship business. We have the wholesale company. So we've had a lot of success. And then we have the events, which I don't count as a company, but it's there.
Dude, I actually have to. I'm so sorry. I have to highlight this. Right? Because when I meet amazing people, when I meet people who have stories like you do, when I meet people who have the hustle like you do, I'm so glad that your event is called Hustle Harder. It's very indicative of who you are. There you go. I was going to ask where the heck the hat was. So, when I meet people like you, I want to put people like you in front of others who have excuses, right? Logan gets this all the time. I get this all the time. People who come to me and they're like, hey, I work a 9 to 5. I need a hard stop at 5 p.m. because my wife's going to get mad at me. And this is why I can't go become a multimillionaire in real estate investing or XYZ. And then I love having people like you in my back pocket, right? I'll cite you. I'll cite Naaman. I'll cite young cat that we got coming on in a few weeks, Donnie Goodman, who's a mutual friend of ours, and Eric Klein, even, who's got one of the craziest stories we've ever heard. But and the reason I want to highlight you guys, and this is why I'm so glad that you do Hustle Harder, is because it gets more people to know who the heck you are, so they can limit those limiting beliefs. They can get them out of their heads. They can, kick excuses by the wayside. So I want to know, man, Hustle Harder is huge. It's massive. I unfortunately had to miss it just because it's the worst time ever, man. I had everyone's birthday back to back that time. And if I left, I would have been like kicked out of the household, or like, the loved one circle. But for the next one, I mean, you've already done it so freaking big. Carlos Reyes, Jerry Norton, you had Naaman was there, Klein was there. JJ, who was on our podcast really early on, was a speaker there. JJ's amazing. what is the future of Hustle Harder?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So I wasn't sure if I was going to keep doing the event side, right? Because events are hard. A lot of people like nobody well, anything, even business is hard. People don't realize how much work an event takes, right? A lot of people, especially like you think your best friends and your close ones are gonna how do you call it? Be there for you and support you, but those are the guys that want the discounts and want to be there for free. And then other people, there's people that can't afford it, and you got to think about travel and think about all these things. You got to, there's just so many moving pieces to events. So we weren't sure if we were going to do it, honestly. But a lot of people again left inspired, left lives changed. We've done a good job at doing them, and so we do want to. I know for a fact we're doing one more. I don't. If this goes well, we'll continue to do them, but I want to do a massive one next year. I'm not fully sure on the dates yet. We're still trying to figure it out. I'm thinking April, May, and I'm thinking, big, like very, very big. I'm thinking Max Maxwell, Pineta, Pace, Jamil. So I've already talked to some of these guys and gotten them on board. I'm friends with a lot of these guys. So bringing Carlos back, bringing Jerry back, bringing the all in guys back. So just going like big. That's something that I really want to do with just the top leaders in the industry, and doing an event of 1,500 plus people. That's a goal and a dream of mine, but it's not going to be an easy one. So it takes a lot of preparing. It takes a lot of upfront capital, but it's something that I love the challenges. I'm not going to lie, and I love investing in people. I already invest so much into events. I invest in traveling all over the country. I invest in speaking all over the country because none of that's free. We have to, we got to pay expenses. You got to pay photographers and videographers, but I really want to invest in. It's really cool to see 30 states flying into Milwaukee. Like, whoever thought of? I always tell everybody, I'm like, none of you guys ever thought of coming to Milwaukee, especially the speakers. Who would have thought all these gurus, not even just the people that were there to speak, but all the guys who were there to support. HBHS flew in. Tez, a guy who's massive on TikTok, flew in. A lot of these big guys are flying in just to support, and they're all in Milwaukee. J.R. Hernandez flew in. It's like, what? Our city doesn't get a lot of love. You always you either don't know it exists or you hear bad things. And so the average income, I always tell this to everybody, is $23,500 a year, which just goes to show that my first deal ever was more money than I would have made, than the average person makes in my city. I made $25,000 in my first deal. So it's been an inspiration to our city. I get a lot of love from a lot of big, business owners and people in the city saying, wow, like you're really doing it for us. And so, I definitely want to keep expanding, but a lot of people want me to do it in another state. I'm still not sure yet. I guess we'll have to wait and see.
So awesome. I got to tell you the story because I was actually with Pace and Jamil and Jerry Norton probably like 2 weeks before your event, and we were in Montana. They came to Montana, which is that's where I live, and probably very similar. Like most people don't come to Montana unless they want to get away, and so unless you've actually have ever been to Montana, like most people don't know anything about it. But anyway, we were sitting at Jerry's lake house, and he was actually talking about speaking at your event, and it was really cool. Like this moment now, and when I was back there, it was cool to hear him talk about you, and in that circle of influence, like Jerry Norton's the man, right? And he had one of the biggest guys in the game speaking at your event. So again, big props to you.
Twice too.
So good.
Yeah. So we originally brought Jerry back in February in the middle of winter. Now, Jerry's not a winter guy. In the middle of winter, I think it was like maybe not that cold, maybe like 10, 15 degrees outside. We actually got a lot of snow, whereas if a person does not know how to drive would definitely crash that day. And we were able to bring Jerry, Carlos, TJ Tajani was here, Tiffany and Josh High were here, HBHS flew in. So yeah, it's been awesome to see what we've been able to do. But it all comes from one hustling, right? From the beginning, I knew that if I wanted to earn everybody's respect in the industry. So from the first moment that I got put on that podcast, I ended up getting put on. Quentin put me on his podcast, Quentin Flores, and then Aaron Bevins put me on his podcast. We made 100 grand in our first two months, pretty much. And that was very, very quick. I mean, as soon as we got that deal, that first deal, it was boom, 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 deal, 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 deal. We did $250,000 in our first 6 months. But when we did that first podcast, that was it. Like, that was enough for me to say, I'm inspiring people. I'm proving my parents wrong. And, and we're hustling. So all I wanted to do was earn everybody's respect. I didn't want to talk about it. I just wanted to show it. And that's how I earned the respect of one of my partners who's worth a couple $100 million, who I throw the event with, who everybody loves when they come. His name's Scott Leary. It was by doing the business. And then when he questioned me, showing him the HUDs and showing him how I could scale something very, very quickly and earning that respect. And so that's what I did very early on, is just work very, very hard to get here. And I haven't stopped, and I won't stop. And I don't know what's next, man. It's going to, like, at this point, we're getting to the point where 10Xing stuff is getting a lot easier. And, I have a lot of amazing relationships like Sam. We've talked about doing some really cool things. So yeah, I wonder what's next.
I got to say this, bro, we're just getting started.
Yeah.
Like, if anyone's watching, for everyone who is watching, right, I noticed so many names here from Sub2. We got some names from Astro, from TTP. Wow. When I went and headhunted Tony, not just because he's a brother to me, he's a good friend, it's because I'm trying to basically help arrange the next wave of greats. There's going to be a few other young cats. Donnie's going to come on, right? And normally I don't really announce things this early. For anyone that doesn't know Donnie, you're going to know Donnie. You need to know Donnie. You need to know Tony, because he's going places, and it's big freaking places. And it's so crazy to see where you're at right now at the age of 23. And man, the number one thing I got to say about you is, simply put, you haven't even started yet, dude. And I am here for it. I know Logan's here for it. I'm super excited to, I know you guys connected in Phoenix a little bit ago, but to officially share time with you and share space with you, it means a lot to me. A lot of people here, I know a lot of people are inspired by you, especially the young people. We've got a few people in the chat who I know they're very freaking young. Like, so we got some 18, 19-year-olds in the chat who, they look at, I'm in my mid 20s. Right, Logan's a little bit older than I am. He's about 6 months older than I am, and they look at people who are even in my mid 20s, like people they may not be able to relate to me, because it's like, okay, he's been through college, he's been through grad school, he's a little bit further along. You at 23, like, you are tangible proof of concept for someone who's just out of high school that you can make it in this game and become a millionaire in your 30s. Heck, a millionaire before you're 25.
Yeah.
So I cannot wait to see what you do next. Or all these people that want to connect with you, how can they?
Well, at the Tonny Romero, that's that's my Instagram. We also have Hustle Harder Community, which is our mentorship now, but that's a whole nother topic. But at the Tonny Romero, you can catch us there, and then I do have Tonny Romero on YouTube, which we haven't really posted much other than like one video with PCS. But other than that, we're still building. So we're finally going to get into the video space. I mean, I have a studio here with probably over $60,000 in camera and video and all sorts of stuff, gear, and another 2 studios that we've built. But the hardest part is finding time. Like, we don't have time for it. We're just working. Like, a lot of people, we originally started mentoring like very, very small groups. And we said, well, let's build a community, because it got to the point where we didn't even have time for this stuff. It's because we're actually doing the business every single day and trying to focus on that first, because it makes us so much more money, So, yeah, I mean, hopefully we'll have a lot more videos and podcasts and TikToks. We'll have to do some stuff together, Sam, while we're at Scale and Escape this weekend. Tomorrow, I actually get to see you in person. So I'm super stoked about that. But yeah, the Tonny Romero.
Tony, thank you so much for giving us your time, sharing your story. I know there was a couple of things in there that maybe was the first time you're sharing, and whether you felt uncomfortable or not, you honestly did an amazing job, and the authenticity of it definitely showed through, and your intentions showed through in your tonality and how you talk, that you actually really do care, and you're somebody who's very genuine. And you talked about like you have like a natural cockiness to you. I see it as a confidence, but it's a true confidence. It's a belief. it's done with the right intentions rather than masking something that you're trying to hide from. And I just know that person because I've been on both sides of those coins, but I can see that yours is authentic. And so just appreciate everything that you shared with us today. And I just have actually one more curiosity question. So you have these multiple verticals that you're doing. Some of them, have real estate together. A couple of them fall off the real estate vertical, but it also makes sense why you're doing them, right? Because your wife and then your family's involved in those things. What is your goal to have your role be in each of those businesses? Is it something that you want to like put smart people in place to operate them? Do you want to have your hands on the businesses? Do you want to be just money partner? Like, kind of explain a little bit about your roles in those businesses and anything you decide to add on top of that as well.
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So in the pet grooming salon, obviously my wife's my partner. I'm more of a mentor and investor than anything else. So obviously an investor with upfront capital, and then a mentor as far as the right hiring process, the right systems to put in, things like that. But as far as the actual day-to-day business, I don't run that. I don't operate that. So I've never been there to groom a dog or to bring in a client. Thankfully, ever since the day we opened, we've been 6 weeks booked since day one, $0 in marketing.
Awesome.
So yeah, thankfully it's all because of branding, man. Social media, even in your local areas, So even to this day, it's you can't get an appointment, earlier than October 15th, probably, right now. And so I don't do any of the day to day. I'm never there. I've never seen, I shouldn't say I've never seen it, right? Because we built it and everything, but I more so would be there for the logistics as it continues to grow and bring in more groomers and the operations grows. As far as the taco truck, same thing. I'm never there to cook. I do try some of the foods and the recipes. I make sure the marketing is good. We do have a marketer who is a partner in another business who now, because he is a partner, gives me a lot of guidance and does a lot of work for us. So he's been a really amazing asset to have kind of here in my life. So there in the taco truck business is just making sure that numbers make sense. And then putting systems in place, right? So one taco truck alone, just 36 events last month. $80,000 gross profit or gross, right?
So awesome.
Right. So then just it's a taco truck, right? So it's just those things of, making sure the operations are good and making sure the hiring and firing, but eventually, more so being an investor than anything else in that business, letting my dad kind of learn his own role in what he's doing. And then my uncles, they know what they're doing at this point. So just building more. And then, my dad, so in the taco truck is very interesting. I'm 100% investor, right? So I invest every single penny. And then we're 50-50 equity partners. He takes a salary. I don't. So I gave him a salary because let's just say, for example, he comes from the job world, right? So where you follow, you get a paycheck every single 2 weeks, et cetera, right? So
Yep.
He doesn't understand how to handle his money. So if I give him like just his equity, that's how we get paid out. Then at the end of the year, he'll probably have spent all the money, not know how to write anything off, and then been screwed in serious amount of debt. So instead, I give him a salary. I manage the equity. So the salary matches what he makes right now. So I know that he can survive, right? And I know that he can be at least stable for the next couple months as we build. And then all the equity that's built in goes then into additional trucks. We are planning on getting a restaurant soon here with our uncles as well, with my uncles as well. And then, buying some real estate assets as well. So all those things come from the equity. So thankfully I'm in a spot where for my other businesses, I'm still young. I don't really have a lot of crazy lifestyle expenses. And if I have any travel expenses, it comes from a different company that pays for it, like Hustle Harder Community pays for. So, I don't need to touch it. So all that money just keeps getting invested. So it's not only about building the business. It's also about positioning the people that own it in the right spot so that they can have the life of their dreams as well. So I really didn't want to just say, hey, Dad, here you go. We're in a business together. You run it all. I definitely want him to run it all, but I also want to help create the life of his dreams because, they gave me a lot. So that's how I position myself in those two businesses. In the community, obviously I'm the mentor. So eventually we are bringing in some coaches underneath to kind of do some like the stuff like you guys do and sub two daily dial, things like that, just giving additional support to community members. In the wholesale company, I'm not in it as much anymore. I was for a very, very, very long time. Thankfully, we've gotten past that point. There is still, 5 to 8 hours a week that I'm still in that business. And then in the software company, we have sales guys. So thankfully that one's worked out well. We've been able to scale fairly well, but I have a partner in the software company who is a developer and software engineer. So it just worked well.
That's awesome. Yeah. I appreciate you sharing that, because I think a lot of people, they look at entrepreneurs and they see people with multiple businesses and they always just wonder how, because they think about themselves as like being the operator of all 5 businesses. And, and that's why I asked you to share that with you, because I have multiple businesses as well. And I just know that you can't run multiple businesses unless you have partners or you have really good employees or staff members who are actually running the day-to-day operations. So, and obviously, like, you're super smart. You're 23 years old and your wisdom far outweighs your physical age, right? You're definitely mature past your physical body, and it's cool to see. So thank you so much for sharing this hour with us and sharing your wisdom. And if you guys haven't connected with him yet on Instagram, go follow him at the Tonny Romero. And Sam, just appreciate you for bringing this together. Again, like, we've connected only one brief moment at the All In event, Tony, but excited to continue to grow our relationship. And for everyone out there who's listening as well, like, thank you guys for being on here. Thank you for being supportive. Whether you follow me and Sam or you came and follow Tony, like, let's all follow each other and continue to grow together, because that's what this game is all about. Like some of our mentors talk about, collaboration or competition. Like, we always will grow better when we do things together rather than we're trying to compete against each other. So thank you guys all so much.
One final thing.
Let's go for
so
it.
I just want to say, Sam, in the beginning, you said you wanted to find the people before they're super huge. And I just want to say thank you for putting me on this podcast, because I already see where this is going. I hope that everybody that's here that maybe came through my channels stays and subscribes to you guys, because Sam, I love your energy. You've always been positive. I've not a single bad thing to say about you. You're literally one of the best humans that I've ever met. And Logan, obviously, if you're with Sam, it's more likely because your characters are very similar. I know we did get to connect, and you're awesome, dude. So I'm just really thankful that you guys brought me on here, and I'm gonna support your podcast until you guys sell it for $100 million. So thank you guys for having me. This is amazing, and I want to support you guys till the end. So love you both.
Dude, love you, brother. I'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah.
And then you and I are gonna work on some dope things together. Ace just walked in, the puppy just walked in. It's a big puppy, if you guys can see. He's over 6 feet tall, so he's amazing. Guys, Tonny freaking Romero. Follow him at the Tonny Romero. It's not the Tonny Romero, it's the Tonny Romero. Go give him some love. Take a screenshot of this, post it on IG stories, tag him, show him some major freaking love. This guy's going to take over this space. He's going to take over so many things. I can't wait to see you prosper, brother. You're already doing it, but you're pushing me to be better. You're pushing guys like Logan to be better. It's been an honor to share this space with you. Everyone, we will see you guys next week.
All right, guys. We're out. Bye.